Hello and welcome back. In the previous video we recorded the creation of rule base or the policy. We haven't installed the policy, and in this video I'm going to show you how to push the policy to the gateways. We have one gateway and that gateway is connected, and we have this policy which shows the policy targets to be only that gateway. So if you want to make sure what that target is, you can go to the launch menu and then say manage policies and layers, and in here we named in the previous videos from standard to perimeter policy, and here it says all gateways. You can edit and then select the targets from there. So installation targets, you can click and then provide a specific gateway, but since I have only one gateway in this setting, I would leave the default as they are. Then close that bit. That policy is now in place. We have a number of rules we created and they are all in their sections, and what we're going to do now, we can either push the policy from here, which is only pushing this policy, but if you click here install policy, it will ask you what kind of policy, what policy you're trying to push if you have number of policies, and there are multiple ways to push the policy from. So here we have the install policy, and then it asks where do you want to install. That's the gateway in the policy targets, and we are installing on selected gateways. If you have a cluster, if one of them fails, then it doesn't have to push to one gateway, it has to stop. For example, one gateway will take the policy, the other one will reject, or for whatever reason, then you selecting this so that the policy is pushed to both gateways. Or if it fails, don't push anything to any of them. That's a good way to protect your cluster from having different policies. But in certain cases, when you're upgrading firewalls, one is already upgraded and you want to push the policy to that one, so you will unselect this one, policy goes to the upgraded one, and later when you upgrade the members of the cluster that are in the cluster, then you can select this one and it syncs the policies. So we need to push the policy now, and when window appears you can click details and then it will leave the window open for you. If it's quite quick and you cannot see, then at the bottom it has a little arrow you can click and get the details in there. Okay, so here there's some warning, objects of none. You can correct those, but if you see red, it will stop and fail, and then you might get SK number that tells you what the problem is. This one succeeded with an error, and okay with that error. So let's minimize and then check the testing. For example, we allowed the outbound from the inside LAN to access anything on the internet, and also we allowed services coming from the internet to access these ports. So, and in the logs, if you see, you have audit logs, but you have the general logs, the traffic logs here as well. So if you refresh, or if you create automated refresh at certain intervals, then you can see some communications being blocked, some is allowed. So you can search specific things in the logs. We will create another video to cover how you trace, how you do auditing, how you search for issues, traffic that's been blocked, that's been allowed, what's happening in your environment, creating reports from here using Smart View. All these things we will do it separately, but this case we're going to cover how we push policy and test it. We have an inside LAN, and in our design, and I have one machine that's actually in a different network. I'm going to show you Metasploitable, and I need to check what network that's connected to. Let's check. It's connected to 192, that's the NAT, so we need to change the IP, and let's say, yeah, and I don't have an IP, so let's assign an IP from the firewall. Actually, good way to learn how to create DHCP from a firewall. So our gateway was HTTPS, and then it was, I think, this one, yeah, and then see if you can connect to the firewall. We're coming from the management PC and we're accessing that subnet, which is the firewall HTTPS, and in our policy we allowed my management in here, that PC, to access, and actually we can add more networks. I remember now in my network that won't happen because I'm using, yes. So what we're going to do, I will increase the access to the firewalls from this network to multiple numbers. So let's create, let's update the group and add networks, and the network I'm coming from is 10.1.1. yeah, from this network inside LAN. That should be all right. And then we have one added network. Let's push that change and install the policy. Push and change added 10.1.1.0 to access the firewalls. You get used to these things. They're good policy. So it will push and then it will install. We'll leave this one open. And that's all right. Now let's refresh our web UI. That's accepted. So you see that subnet is coming from here, and actually that should be available. We are going to the gateway to create DHCP. So DHCP server, if you click here, enable DHCP server, we apply that change. At least one subnet, yeah, we can create the subnet we want to create. So the network is 10.1.1.0 and the subnet mask is 255.255.255.0, and we want to create the pool, and it will be include, and status is enabled. Subnet is 10.1.1. We're starting from 10 and we're finishing at that 1.1.20, let's say 21st IP addresses, least time if we want to change the defaults right there, and enable DHCP subnet, and that's all good. Now if we say OK, the firewall will be behaving as a DHCP server. We apply that now. If you want to add a different portion and you name it something else, that's fine. Now let's go to our Metasploitable machine and change the network it's connected to. So if I go to settings, and the settings, it's on NAT, I'm going to move it to my VMnet 1, which is the 10.1.1. and then this little machine, if we check the IP, we will, let's say, reboot from here. And I was just trying to restart the network services from the root user, and then from there it gets the new IP address from the new network 10.1.1.10. that's the DHCP IP. Sometimes you need to allow also the DHCP services from the internal LAN or whatever subnet, and then create a policy that allows the control traffic of the DHCP service. But here we're okay because LAN network, it goes to everywhere. Okay, let's see what we got. So we haven't got the IP. Okay, let me troubleshoot that. I'll pause the recording and then re-record. Okay, so I created DHCP interfaces on the firewall. And if you want to look at it, so let's say on the firewall, we have a DHCP server enabled, and I have 10.1 and 10.2, and the first 10 IP addresses from each subnet. So I have some machines running in the background, and they're here. So we have Metasploitable and Kali Linux. This one is connected to VMnet 2. I'm using it as a web server. So if you see the settings, it's connected to VMnet 2, and from our design, we know we have some subnets we created, the local LAN 10.1 and also 10.2 from the DMZ. So I put a web server here using Metasploitable and one machine from the internal network, which is Kali. So what I'm trying now to do is see the password, see the rule base we have here. We have outbound from the inside going to the internet. We have inbound going to the web server, which is the 10.2. If we double click, you see the 10.2 subnet. We should put an IP address here, not the whole object, and then those services. So I'm coming from anywhere, trying to access that. So if I go to my PC, if I open a new tab, and the Metasploitable is running at this IP. So we have that page, and if you're training on cybersecurity, there's one tool to practice on all the vulnerabilities and learn how to hack it. So that's it. We created a policy. We put some machines in the networks we allocated, and then we can see in the logs, if you remove and then you're searching for a specific IP, you can see what ports have been blocked, what ports are allowed. So for example, this is specific IP we were looking at, 2.2.128. You can see the traffic coming from that machine, those machines accessing these ports, or everything's allowed. So the firewall is allowing those. These are older. I've been troubleshooting because some connectivity issues I had with Metasploitable, Kali, and the network over here. So I had to add routes to here, the default route on here, default route on here, then connect to the internet. So that gives you an overview of how to install checkpoint firewalls, checkpoint management server, how to install smart dashboard, how to build policies from there, and the detailed configurations such as the NAT and other services. We will create another playlist which gives you advanced checkpoint administration and configuration skills. Thank you, and I see you in another playlist.